Hi, welcome to Philly Jazz Talks. I'm Suzanne Cloud, Project Director of the Philadelphia Jazz Legacy Project. And this evening, we're going to be talking with blues and jazz singer T.C. III and Dr. Diane Turner, author and curator of the Charles L. Blockson Collection at Temple University, about Philly's own musical great, composer and pianist and organist Trudy Pitts. Born in Philadelphia in 1932, Trudy Pitts studied at the Philadelphia Music Academy and Juilliard, and being fluent in both classical and jazz, she eventually went on to play with Ben Webster, Gene Ammon, Sonny Stitt, Roland Kirk, Willis Jackson, and Pat Martino. But before we dig in too deeply, and too early. First of all, we're trying to get Diane straightened out. Sometimes these Zoom meetings, these Zoom programs have some technical issues, as everybody well knows. Anyway, it's important that you know these jazz talks are brought to you by the Philadelphia Jazz Legacy Project. We're an organization whose mission is to establish a permanent jazz archive for Philadelphia area jazz artists and the community at large through recordings, video interviews, manuscripts, and material culture like photographs, programs, posters, anything that relates to Philly jazz and its history. I'd also like to thank the Philadelphia Cultural Fund for partially sponsoring these talks, and also you, the people and attendees who support us with their donations. We appreciate it very much. I also want to let everybody know that we just received a Grammy grant to digitize many of the interviews that we've been doing and that others have done over the past years. We're very excited about that. Anyway, to get a reminder of our events and other Philly Jazz Legacy work, please go onto our website at phillyjazzhistory.org and sign up for our monthly newsletter. Now, to introduce tonight's guests. Dr. Turner holds 3 Temple University degrees. Her areas of specialization and research include African American labor, cultural and social history, Philadelphia jazz history, independent Black filmmakers, oral history, and public history. Her dissertation is entitled Organizing and Improvising, a History of Philadelphia's Black Musicians Protective Union Local 274. She has taught African American history at Brown, Northeastern University, Rowan University, and the University of South Florida, among other institutions. She has authored My Name is Oni Judge, Feeding the Soul, which she'll be reading excerpts tonight. Feeding the Soul, Black Music, Black Thought, in which one of the interviews that she did was with Trudy Pitts. And our latest book has been Images of America, Philadelphia Jazz with Me, Myself, and I. Next, coming up tonight is T.C. III. He's a singer, songwriter, and producer and has roots that are embedded in the jazz community because he was nurtured by the jazz lullabies his mother, Trudy Pitts, sang to him, while his father, drummer Mr. C, instilled jazz beats into his very being. He was only 14 when he began performing with his mother and father. He studied voice at the prestigious Settlement Music School in South Philadelphia, then effectively carried the Philly sound of jazz to New York City. His inherent love of music, along with his unique talent for vocalizing jazz, was influenced by legends such as Eddie Jefferson, Leon Thomas, and Johnny Hartman. An extraordinary jazz vocalist, his work ranges from rhythmically scatting jazz vocals to heartfelt renditions of the Great American Songbook. TC has toured extensively throughout the United States, Europe, Asia, and the Caribbean islands, and has collaborated and performed with countless legends, including the Sun Ra Orchestra, Grover Washington Jr., Art Blakey, John Hendricks, Wynton Marsalis, and George Benson. So let's get started. Lex, you want to put...
Hello.
All right, who do we... Lex, Diane, are you on the phone?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, good. Good evening, everyone. welcome, and thank you, Suzanne, for inviting me to talk about Trudy Pitts, a person that I love dearly, and it was an honor to interview her, and I'm very delighted to be able to share some of these excerpts from her interview this evening. So Lex, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, the slide number 2, if you would put it on slide number 2, these images of Trudy are from the the Charles L. Blockson Afro-American Collection. And I use this photograph, and you'll see why. Can you hit the button so they can hear what Trudy has to say? And TC, don't you start crying, please. I can't see you. All right?
So, with the spiritual feeling that I have for my life, and especially for music, I feel that each time I sit down and play, it's an honor and it's a blessing. And I'm grateful for waking up that day in terms of being able to play music. It's a highlight, and it's a blessing, it's a gift.
Okay, Lex, can you go to the next photograph, please? Number 3, slide 3.
Oh,
Yep. I'm there.
Okay, so this next photograph, I don't know if many people know, but Trudy actually started out in concert music. This particular photograph was taken of her when she was playing European classical music. So would you hit the button, please, Les?
Still obstacles to that even now, Diane. I don't happen to know an African American female at this period of time that's making it solely off of being a concert pianist. I don't know any. There are some that are probably doing it intermittently, but I said solely. I don't know any. There are some female vocalists that have been endorsed, like as part of the Metropolitan Opera and here and there. And it's a little bit easier for the society to endorse vocalists of any kind than it is to endorse the female sit-down pianist. That comes into a whole different world. I know Orientals, Asians that are doing it and that are being accepted, and Caucasians, yes. But I don't know of any African Americans that are doing it unless that knowledge just slipped through my fingers. As I was coming along, I began to realize, fairly early on, as a student, that this was going to be a challenge in terms of competing in the classical concert arena with the males and also with the color thing. And I began to formulate plans in the back of my mind what I may have to resort to in view of that. As far as obstacles are concerned in this business of being renowned in the world of classical music, being a female, and being an African American person, I saw the obstacles present early on just by being in the world of music, in that world of music, in the symphony and classical world, by talking to my peers, by going to concerts, by doing research, reading, um, just by using my ears and eyes and conversation. I saw that the task that I was trying to accomplish was really not going to happen for me at the time that I needed it, which was in the part of my life where I was fresh out of colleges and still striving to perfect my performance, because that goes on for a lifetime. That striving never does stop. But at the part of your life when you want to get involved in being a professional concert pianist, I saw that the time was not right and it was not going to materialize for me. So rather than being a diehard and staying in that venue and subjecting myself to the disappointments and the insults and all of the other things that black people must endure in order to not only be an artist, but to be a human being with values and morals. I kind of veered my musical works into another direction, and thereby came the school teaching that we mentioned early on.
Diane, can I ask you a question? Where was this picture taken? Diane, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm sorry. I believe it was taken down at the Academy of Music.
Oh,
I
okay.
think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can now. I'm starting to cry after hearing that. People can really understand how important someone's voice is to the archive. This is just terrific, Diane. All right, sorry, I had to. I just wondered where the picture was taken.
Yeah, and the thing about it, what Trudy talks about, deciding to go in another direction. Nina Simone was more or less like that too, because
Yeah.
she started out and wanting to play concert and European classical, but because of being a woman and an African American woman, it was very difficult for them, and so Trudy had another plan, which was good.
Yeah.
So can we go to the next slide, slide 4?
Yep.
Now this one, before you hit it, when I was doing my research on Local 274, I ran across a number of different African American organizations that existed in Philadelphia that no longer exist, and it had to do with the fact of African Americans lived, all classes of African Americans lived in the same community and so forth before so-called integration. And so this particular group, you can see Trudy, she's second from the left. And, Trudy was always a beautiful woman, but I'm going to let her tell you about this group.
Okay.
So could you hit it, please?
Going back again. That was one of the highlights of my career, because it was unique, it was different, and I've not done anything quite like that again. And I don't think that that kind of endeavor was done before in Philadelphia, and I've not heard of it being done anywhere else in the city. It was the piano ensemble comprised 7 pianos, and we were 2 people at each piano. So there were 14 musicians playing at one time, playing like, there are many more musicians at times than that playing together in orchestras and big bands, and particularly symphony orchestras. But this was unique because it was all pianos. And that organization was in active duty. Of course, it wasn't I wasn't in on the beginning of the organization of this, but I was called in to take part in this. I guess, how old was I guess I was about 17. And I was the youngest of the group. Most of them were not professional musicians in terms of performing individually, but they were all professional in women, in that they were mostly school teachers and educators and had been trained in the interim as musicians. And our conductor and trainer was Professor Wisso, who was an excellent man. I'll remember him for the things that he was able to do with 14 women, which, looking back on that, I know that was not an easy task to do, but we were all interested in music. That's why we were there. And we had marvelous time doing concerts around, mostly in the area and surrounding areas. And one of the highlights of that is a concert that we did at the Academy of Music. We were all dressed in beautiful gowns, just alike, custom made, and a beautiful program. I don't remember that far back what the program consisted of, but the music was always fantastic, and I always felt very, very special to be a part of that organization. And when they finally dissolved, the personnel just continued to do what they were doing to make a living, teaching school, being educators. I don't know what happened to Professor Wisso too much after that. I'm sure that he's deceased today, but I can't give too many details on that because it kind of, that era kind of just disappeared as I went on with my endeavors. But it was one of the highlights of my life, and I was involved with that ensemble for about, I would say, maybe 3-4 years.
Mm.
When I initially showed that photograph to Trudy, she was really surprised. And you see when I mentioned it to her response to it. But, it was really nice. So the next photograph, if we could go to slide 5. And
Yep.
I wanted to ask TC. TC, is that in your grandmother's house?
It could be.
Yeah, because you see there's a couch over there and the piano, the way it's situated.
Yeah, it could have been my dad. He said he took that picture, so it could have been, he could have been standing on the steps.
Okay, but he didn't take that particular one. John Mosley did.
Yeah, well, my dad ain't here now. Every picture that used to show up, he used to be saying, "I took that."
Okay.
or either he would say, "I paid that guy to take it."
Sounds like your dad.
Right. So, once again, it's a beautiful picture of Trudy, and like the styles back there in the 50s. I love the way the women dressed. It, just beautiful, very feminine. You see, she has her pearls on, and the collar is just really beautiful. So, can you hit the sound for this one, please? Sorry.
Well, the subconscious decision, let's start there, Diane, was always in the back of my mind that I loved jazz. As I said, I grew up in a world of music, but it was not only classical music that I grew up in, because as my two older sisters and my brothers, as we all got older, we were all coming up into the world of bebop, which is, as far as I'm concerned, been the most creative evolutionary period of jazz, with people like Charlie Yardbird Parker and Lester Young and Sonny Stitt and Oscar Peterson and Dizzy. How can I leave? I would not ever leave out Dizzy. I should have probably said him first. But my siblings were record buyers, and that music was playing around the house all the time because I was into the classics. That doesn't say they were. They weren't. They liked what I was doing and encouraged me, but they were often running into jazz when I was a classical student, and the records were playing around the house while they were listening to those recordings of the bebop period beginning to show its head. My father was listening to WFLN on the classical music station, so I had the best of both worlds going on at the same time. And so with the jazz being played around there all the time, my ear was open to that as well, and I liked it. And in between practicing my studies for the upcoming lesson, I would dibble and dabble with some of it. If I heard a melody played that I liked, I would sit and experiment with that on the piano as well. And when Earl Gardner came along, I was just so fascinated with his artistry and with his dynamics and with his voicings and the whole genius of what he did. I was particularly in those days fascinated with Earl Gardner, and so something was happening inside of me even then with the music, even though I was still a student. And I was happy that my mind was open to this. I found that through listening to it and sitting down, just dibbling and dabbling with it on the piano, I had an affinity for chord structure. I found that I could hear what they were doing and kind of get into it without not too many problems in terms of going to school to study jazz. I never did that. I found out with my classical background and the knowledge of the piano and the knowledge of the whole piano and all the keys thereof, that I didn't have a problem with laying down chord changes. Now, improvisation, that's a whole nother thing that goes on for the rest of your life, trying to do that. And I feel that I'm very busy trying to improvise today. It never stops. The freedom that it offers you is overwhelming, and it never stops. But chord structure, I had never had a problem with that. And so I began, from that period on, I still continued to do what I was doing with my lessons and my involvement in all other forms of music, the churches and the this and the that.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was on mute. The next two, the one with Mr. C's group, the High Tones, I included that because when Shirley Scott left the group, Trudy came into the group. And so in the next two slides, she's going to talk about that. She came into the group, and then she left the group and got some more experience, and then she came back to the group. So I'm not going to talk unless if you would just hit that particular slide. And that photograph was taken by Jack T. Franklin. And in it, you'll see Shirley Scott, John Coltrane to the right, Tootie Heath to the left, and Mr. C, who's standing up there. And he had a number of different groups. You know, he was very, like a really entrepreneur when it came to jazz. He booked individuals and just gave a number of people a start. So he was very important too. So if you would hit that, we'll get started.
Who was later to become my husband, Bill Carney, known as Bill Carney in those days before the Mr. C surfaced. that I was brought into the active world, the active, exciting, moving, alive world of the creative world of jazz. I was at that point a member of Local 274. This was back in 1955. And let's refer to Bill Carney as Mr. C. That's what I'm used to saying these days. Had his own group at the time, and it was in the period of time when jazz organ was beginning to show its head and become very, very popular in the world of jazz. And the people who kind of got this sound off the ground were people like Wild Bill Davis, who is now still very, very active, mostly in Europe, and still playing the organ so beautifully. Jimmy Smith, who is the same, who introduced a whole new style of playing organ in terms of improvisation and coupled with using the pedals, which we all know is the bass. Instead of using a bass player, organ players played the pedals, which made them self-contained. And in those days, poor bass players were out of work like flies because the organ was like kind of monopolizing the whole scene then. But evolution takes place in jazz, and it was the time then for that to happen. Mr. C had his own group at that time, and own organ group. He's always been the leader of his groups, never a sideman, always the leader and the negotiator. And his group at that time was John Coltrane on tenor saxophone, Trudy Heath from Philadelphia, Heath brothers, who lived right around the corner from me in South Philadelphia as I was growing up. Coltrane, also a Philadelphian. Miss Shirley Scott of Philadelphia had been his organist up until the point that he contacted me and needed another female organist, and consulted Local 274, the Black Musician Union at that time here in Philadelphia, and was given a list of names to call. I was one of them, and that kind of turned my world around. When he called me and proposed what he thought he would like to do, I was in awe of it. I was challenged by it because anything different in the music world was always a challenge. It never was frightening, it was just a challenge. And I accepted that, and I did join the group at that level with John Coltrane, Trudy Heath, Mr. C, who was the vocalist and percussionist. These are the people I was brought into the music of jazz with. That went on for a short while because with my lack of experience in that field, I was not able to keep up with what they were doing, but it did plant a seed and it set a precedence for me to grow on and to strive for. And after us agreeing that he needed someone at that point with more experience because he had gigs lined up that needed the music to be excellent, he became my manager and got me jobs as a solo organist by myself to explore the instrument, to play by myself. And that I did around Philadelphia and got very familiar with the instrument, singing, playing, and singing. It was back in the days when people like Nina Simone were working at 22nd and Walnut Street and doing supper clubs that that I also did at that point of my development. And that went on for about 3 years, and it was in 1958, 3 years later, after we met, that I was called in to
Next slide, please.
Yep.
And can you hit the sound for the next slide?
John Coltrane. They were very liberal with me in my inexperience and recognized my musical background was very extensive and that they were fascinated by my affinity with chord changes, which I always had a feeling for. And, they were very patient, very tolerant, and very willing to help me to try to develop some of the skills that I needed in order to really be credible and for it to make sense, being even on the bandstand with them. But as I say, I did need I needed to go in another direction in the meanwhile in order to cope with that heavy environment. But they became friends, and our friendship and association with John lasted until the creator took him on, as we say, to another level. At that time, his first wife, who we called Neat and later became known as Naima, was a very beautiful lady, and she was a very good friend. This is the years that I am talking about. Even to this day, we're friends with Trudy Heath, who's living in California. We talk back and forth on the phone, and we see each other whenever we can. It remained a family affair.
All right, Diane, we're going to have to, I'd like to bring TC into this now. If we can just pause this for a while, is that okay?
Sure, and she does mention TC in one of these. There's the last two, and she mentions him in one of them.
Okay, well, let's kind of switch off for a minute and bring her wonderful son into it. And I was going to, now, Lex, do you have a picture that we can show of TC and his?
Well,
parents?
actually, real quick, I just wanted to interject that
Sure.
that photograph, that the last photograph, it was ironic that she was playing the piano, but in the background on the wall was Shirley.
Right.
On the frames of Shirley Scott's album covers that they had right next to her. So there's a picture that her and Shirley were in together.
Yeah.
but they didn't plan it, you know what I mean?
Right. All right, TC, tell me about what life was like when you were growing up with your mom and your dad, and especially your mom.
Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody who's here tonight. I want to thank you for having me, asking me to do this, and thank our tech gentleman. What's his name again?
Lex.
Lex. Thank Lex and thank Diane and all the people that the few or the people who have joined in this evening, because my mother, I've learned so many lessons from her. One of the lessons that I learned and I was a man when I learned this one. She used to send people every holiday season. She would be sending out all these Christmas cards to all these people, thousands of people. This is before the internet.
Right.
I mean, cards, real cards, writing out their name. And I said, Mom, why are you doing that? All that money? She said, these people, she pointed to the pile, the people that come see your father and me, they bought this house. They put the food on the table, and they are special, and we have to treat them as such. They could have did anything they wanted to do with their money, but they supported us, and we need to show our appreciation. So that's
TC,
the kind of person.
TC, can I just interject there? I have some Christmas cards from your mom.
In fact, well, TC has a picture of a Christmas card. Lex, you want to show it?
Yeah, I just need a second to find it.
Okay. It should be right there. um, where it's
The
a high,
oh
it's
yeah,
got
yeah, I
high
see it.
tones on
I
it.
see it. Yeah, I see it.
All right, let's see it. This is one of the photos that, yeah, that goes well with your story, TC. So,
Okay, yeah. So
Diane, have you seen this?
the reason
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, we on Zoom, so
Right.
anyway, I had to the reason I wanted that picture there, and first of all, I really like listening to Diane's interview. I was saying for a minute, why they even got me on here? I mean, she was breaking that joint down. Everything I was gonna say, my mom just said. But the reason I wanted to have this picture was because we in the world I feel that we're living in now. First of all, this month is Women Appreciation Month. Next month is Jazz Appreciation Month. But what I wanted to say is that even though my mother had a lot of aspirations to be about the music, about jazz, the vehicle that led her into what we all know as now was Bill Carney. And so that Diane made that reference, but I needed to say that because it's hard for me to talk about my mom, about Trudy Pitts, without talking about Mr. C, because we were a family. Before Nisha came, it was just us three, and we went everywhere together. When I was 1 year old, I went to Bermuda with my mother and father. Ellsworth Gooding was the tenor saxophone player. And I remember that at 1 year old because Goody, as we affectionately called him in those days, or called him, he tickled me the whole way from New York to Bermuda. And I remember that. Plus back then, in 1960, in those days, the wings had lights on them outside the window. And I was talking about the lights the whole trip in between my tickles. So, but I wanted to just establish that before Bill Carney, Trudy Pitts was Gertrude Pitts. And then she was Gertrude Carney. And then he recently, not recently like yesterday, but before my dad passed, I was with him for the last, I guess, years after my mother passed. We were together a lot. And a lot of stories I got from him. And he said to me, your mother hated that name, Gertrude. She hated that name. So I named her Trudy. And I was like, man, you named her Trudy? He's like, yeah, who you think, And so, everything like the picture that Jack Franklin took, my dad, Bill Carney in the high tones, he said he paid Jack to do that picture. So all the different promotional different things that he did, and he paid people to do it. Now, when as time would go up and they would become more successful, then and time would go on, then whoever took the picture and people were like, oh yeah, I took that picture, as if, they had the forthrightness to seek them out and take a photograph of them. So, certain little details as time goes on go through the cracks. And sometimes in the end, some of those details don't even really matter. But in the early days of growing up with my mother, my dad used to be out prospecting work a lot. So me and her spent a lot of time at home together. She took me to see Hansel and Gretel. And that's where I learned that the breadcrumbs could, follow you back home. And I've been using that my whole life. I've been using that. I did a lot of traveling with them on the road. We drove to Canada. We drove, to Montreal. We did a lot of Atlantic City. We did a lot of traveling before I started kindergarten. We were always on the road. And I looked at all the signs, and the signs were my breadcrumbs. And I'm still doing that now. Hansel and Gretel. But We went to see James Brown at the Uptown Theater, me and my mom by ourselves. Oh, I mean, she took me to see Joe Williams at Peps. She took me to see Amma Jamal at Peps. We did a lot together. And even though I loved my dad, I don't really think that I really would have been really into music if she the way she played the piano, I would just be sitting there like this every day. And so sometimes my dad, when I started helping them. Well, I became my father's first helper with the organ, live-in helper. He taught me how to move the organ and all of that. And sometimes they would have a little spot for me after I helped them set up at a show where I could sit and just watch my mother, because that's what I did. You mystified. You got another question you want to ask? Because I could go on that
before I ask the question, I want to remind everybody that if you want to ask questions from these two wonderful guests, Diane Turner and TC the Third, please put them in the chat, and they'll answer them as best they can. I don't know, TC, do you want to listen to her play some music for a minute that you sent over?
That'd be great.
Okay, Lex, why don't you do the one with which one do you want? The Pat Martino or the Anisha one?
Anisha.
Okay. Lex, can you cue up Anisha? She's got a nice little. There she.
Hi, I'm Trudy Pitts. I would like to share with you one of my original compositions. It's called Anisha. This is dedicated to my daughter, whose name is Anisha. It's very special to me because it indicates the beauty and the magic of the use of chords in compositions. I would like to dedicate this to her. I know she's watching. Anisha. Thank you.
Oh boy. Oh
Hmm.
boy. Talk to us, TC.
Right moments to that, yo.
Yeah.
Well, what I wanted to say, the reason I wanted to play Anisha is, well, first of all, Anisha is my sister. And that song was written before it had a name, but it was written when my mother was pregnant with Anisha. And it was a time period that was real. She wrote a few songs. She also wrote Christmas Time when she was pregnant with Anisha. And my dad and I, we helped with the lyrics. And one of those times when when we were at the piano, and I can't remember what song situation or what was going, because it was natural in my home for my mother to be at the piano. Every morning when she would get up, she would get her coffee, and then she would practice, and then she would do laundry, and then she would practice, and she would do housekeeping, and she would practice. And she did a lot of things, so I can't remember the exact moment, but we named Anisha. My dad woke up and said he had a dream about her name. So her first name was going to be Anisha, and they was trying to come up with a middle name. And I said, name her Theodora, after you and me. We both were William Theodore Carney, me and my dad. And I'm the third. He's junior. But when his father passed when he was a kid, he dropped junior. And we named her at the piano before she was born. And I wanted that to be on the record of this program, because she is a special entity in the legacy of Trudy Pitts and Mr. C and TC the Third. And that's important. Losing Trudy Pitts was a loss, not just for my family, but the world. Growing up in Philly, I could be walking down Chestnut Street and anywhere down. I spent a lot of time in Center City. People would say, how's your mother and father? Tisa, tell your mother I said hi. Tell your mother I said hi. You know how many times somebody told me to tell my mother I said hi? That they said hi? I got to the point that, like, when cell phones came out, I started saying, Mom, I call the people and I say, tell them yourself. Give them the phone and say, tell them yourself, because it just got to be overwhelming. But I'm grateful that I had that life, because I have those memories. I had somebody cuss me out in the middle of 34th Street because there was no funeral for my mother in New York. So, hey, what can I say? No.
Well, that's beautiful, TC. It's interesting what the whole thing about women and music, and it's taken the jazz community and the classical community, as your mother said on Diane's interview, how hard it is. Because, like you were just saying, she would practice the piano, then she'd get up and do some housework, and then she'd practice the piano and do this and do that. I mean, I've met so many wonderful women in the music business who have to juggle.
I forgot. Get her coffee, put her plants. She had her plants. To put her plants up on the porch, hanging up, water her plants. I mean, oh man, in between all that, she was playing the music, the whole thing. And the neighbors and everybody expected that.
Right. Well, she, let me see what kind of questions we have. I hope people have some questions for us. Diane, you still with us, Diane?
There's one from Angie Walker. What was your favorite song of your mother's? I'm guessing that's for TC.
That's a trick question, Angie. Because everything she ever played, I loved it. But on her record, Me, Myself, and I, which was the second slide that Diane had them show with her laying on sitting at the piano like this, she recorded Yes, Jesus loves me. Yes, Jesus loves. She recorded that because of me. Because when I was a little boy, I wanted her to play that. One day, I was a little boy, and one day I said, Mom, this is a common conversation because, I mean, it was really deep. Mom, you know something? I think Yes, Jesus Loves Me would really swing. So she started playing it.
Oh,
And every once in a while, I would say something about a song like that. Singing in the Rain is another one. I called her on the phone, but I was a man then when I called on, you know. But,
and you asked her to play singing you asked her to play.
well, no, I called on the phone because I was listening to Fred Astaire singing over and over and over and over.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly singing
Yeah.
over and over. And I was learning because I was saying, you know, because I was every once in a while I go back to the classics and I listen to the old stuff and I listen to the old standards and I grab a tune and then I take it to the gig. You dig? And try to do what Miles and everybody else did, establish another thing. You know what I'm saying? And so I called up and I said, Mom, I think Singing in the Rain would really swing. And she said, oh yeah? Well, when you get down to town, come on over so we can work it out. And we did, but we did it the first time at the Clef Club at Buzzy Wilson's memorial.
Oh. Oh, wow. Kim Tucker is asking if you could talk a little bit about your mother's spiritual music, the suite that she did.
Yes, A Joyful Noise. Thank you, Kim. She wrote a sacred jazz suite entitled A Joyful Noise. It has about 16 movements, 16 different songs medley into one another. It was written for a 40-piece, well, the way they presented it, it was written for a bigger ensemble than we used, but we performed it with a 40-piece choir. We used a few different choirs, but the main choir was the Clayton White Singers. And Clayton White and my mother, oh man, I just found out that Clayton White, oh man, listen. Anyway, if you hadn't noticed already, I cry when I'm talking about my mom.
It's hard.
But Clayton White helped my mother with the orchestration for the vocal, for the choir. And Bobby Watson, the talented alto saxophonist Bobby Watson, helped with the horn arrangements. And it was a very lavishing, big production. My mother doubled on piano. My father played piano. She doubled on piano and synthesizer and or electric piano, and you know, with strings and things of that nature. And then they had a whole Mr. C was on drums, and then they had a whole Napoleon Black on percussion, and all these different cats. You know, what's my man name? Played a didgeridoo. The tall dude played a didgeridoo. Y'all know who he is. I can't remember his name, but y'all know who I'm talking about. All the different percussion instruments, and there were about 5 vocal soloists. There was Barbara Walker. There was my sister Anisha Carney. There was that's Jive. I can't remember her name. Sang Psalm 23. Wow. Anyway, Italian girl. Can't remember her name right now. I hope she ain't watching.
Bill May is asking if it was recorded, the performance of the
it was recorded. It was recorded, and some people in Philadelphia who have the recording for some reason, are hoarding, or they're holding on to it. Maybe I don't know what the reason is. I have ideas, but I can't seem to get it from them. But I have the sheet music, and one of the things that I want to do is I want to recreate that event and perform that possibly at the Kimmel Center. Maybe somebody, and somebody on here knows somebody that can write a grant to make that happen.
That would be terrific.
Don't hesitate to step up, reach out to Diane or Suzanne, or go to my website, tcthethird.com. Holla at me.
Bill May says, great idea. Oh, and Kim reminds us that the special guest for the Italian singer you were talking about was Annie Scioli.
Annie Scioli, yes. My girl, right? That's right, Annie Scioli, yes.
And Grover Washington was in it, yeah.
So, that was it was a great piece and a great work, and my ex-wife, Laura Hall Carney, she was in the choir, but eventually my mother parlayed in that from that music that she did at the Sacred Jazz Suite with all the female vocalists. She parlayed into like a little set that she started doing away from the Sacred Jazz Suite called Trudy Pitts and the Three Divas.
Now we have another person, DeWitt Peterson, who started the Jazz Vespers at Old Pine, which your mom was he's here tonight, and
he's on here now.
Yeah.
Oh man, I need to get in contact with him because I'm trying to. Okay, so one of the things that she did, the first song that she wrote, the first spiritual composition that she wrote was called Blessed One, the Eternal Truth. That was the song that she wrote when they were doing the Jazz Vespers at Old Pine Street, and they started opening up the service with that hymn. Everybody was singing that.
Well, Pete's saying here that her and your dad promoted the Jazz Vespers so heavily that they got scores of musicians involved, and I was one of them. I sang there too because your mom recommended. And he's talking about a memorial service on Roosevelt Boulevard with 4 organs: Trudy, Joey DeFrancesco, his father, and 2 more. So I mean, your mom had her fingers in almost everything in town. She was so very important.
Yeah, matter of fact, remember that time? Remember how Action News used to come on, and I don't know, I'm not in Philly right these days a lot, but Action News, dun, 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 and every note it'd be another a shot of something like the Philadelphia Pretzel, Love Statue, Trudy Pitts,
I remember that.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, Diane, do you want to add something? Because we're already overtime here, and I wanted to see what would you like to add, Diane? I know we didn't get through your whole presentation. In fact,
maybe we can come back and do it another time, because an hour ain't enough to talk about Trudy Pitts.
Diane?
Well, I just wanted to say, I was very grateful to know Trudy. She was a beautiful person and inspired people to do things. TC talked about, and Tim mentioned, the spiritual. She was a very spiritual person. In fact, I would compare her and John Coltrane, in terms of the music and their spirituality. And I can't say enough about her, and maybe we can come back and do it, and I'll be able to see you all, and you'll be able to see me.
Well,
and I
Diane, I
just want
love
to
your
say this.
idea. Huh?
I got to say this real quick. I met Diane because of her, and I met Diane, I think, at the second office.
Right.
At Broad and Race.
I remember
the
that.
same club where Rochelle Barnes, Rochelle Farrell, when she was Rochelle Barnes, had a steady gig, and everybody used to go down there to see her because she was the bomb. And on the night that she would be there, the joint would be popping. And that's where I met Diane and Alice.
Well, Kim Tucker's given us a good idea, Diane, on, she says that she reminded us in the chat that Trudy's birthday is August 10th. And
Right.
possibly let's work up another program again. I would love to.
Sounds good.
Sounds like a plan.
All right, I wanted to, Lex, you want to put up the important URLs at this point for everybody to. Okay, at the top is TC's website. It's short and sweet and compact. Now the second one under that is the Blockson Collection, which is so long. Yeah, Diane, you have to tell Temple to shorten this thing.
Suzanne, before I just wanted to acknowledge Bill May because we used some of his photographs in our book.
Bill May was here tonight. Bill May,
yeah. That's what I said. I wanted to acknowledge him.
Oh, okay. Well, Bill May has been a part of the jazz community for so long. He's been so important, and thanks for coming, Bill. Another thing I want to hip everybody to is Diane's book, Feeding the Soul, where these interviews that she's done with a lot of different people in the jazz community and beyond are in this book. And you can get it on Amazon and that kind of thing. It's called Feeding the Soul, and it's terrific. Of course, our website is just phillyjazzhistory.org. And we have, you can go to our YouTube channel, and this will be, after we edit it, on our YouTube channel. This will be on there, so anybody who wants to look at it can go back and look at it again.
So, Suzanne.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I had to say this before
What?
You go, because I just realized a text from somebody who was trying to get on, and they had the same issue as Diane. So a lot of people are not here because of some technical difficulty. Well,
what you can do, and what I'll let them know, some people sign up at the very last minute, and then they don't get the link right away. So that could possibly be it. That's not why Diane couldn't get on. But anyway, put the next tile in. Okay. Your tax-deductible donation will help the jazz community build the Jazz Archive for everyone to enjoy. And you can also go to our website and go to the donate page and donate. We are fiscally sponsored by the Painted Bride Art Center. So you can deduct it from your taxes. Remember, your tax day's coming up. So I want to thank our guests, Diane and Dr. Diane Turner and TC the Third, very special people who know a lot about Trudy Pitts and her wonderful legacy for the jazz community. I was very lucky to know her, and we were friends, and I miss her terribly, just like a lot of us do. So I want to say goodnight to everybody, and thank you so much for coming out. And wait for the next. We're having another thing in next month. I don't know the date yet, but get our newsletter, and then you'll know what's coming up. Thanks so much, everybody, and thank you, TC. Thank you,
Thank
Diane.
you, man.
Take care,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Diane.
Thank you, TC.